All right, everyone, buckle up. We're diving deep today into something I know a lot of you are interested in, romance novels.
Yeah, we're going to explore how these books, these stories, might be shaping, might even be influencing our ideas about love in the real world.
Now, whether you're someone who, devours these books like they're going out of style, or you're just kind of curious about why they're so incredibly popular, I think this is going to be pretty fascinating for you.
And we're basing all this whole deep dive on a proposed podcast episode.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's called Between the Pages: Romance Novels and Real Life Love.
Kitschy.
I know, right? And one of the things they were looking at that really caught my eye was how all those common themes you see in these books, like enemies to lovers.
Oh, yeah, a classic.
Exactly. Or like second chance romance, those kinds of things.
Right, those are tropes.
Tropes, yes, thank you. And so they're looking at how those tropes, those themes might actually reflect our own desires, our own beliefs about love.
That's really interesting. Makes you wonder, like, what is it about those specific storylines that just, like, grab us?
Right.
You know what I think it is? It's kind of like these tropes tap into something really basic about being human.
Okay, what do you mean?
I mean, think about it. We crave connection, we crave that sense of belonging, and especially when it comes to love. We want that happy ending. We're wired for it.
Totally. We're like programmed for those happily ever afters. And I mean, come on, you see that longing, that deep desire for a happy ending playing out in like pretty much every romance novel.
For sure.
I'm thinking about second chance romance.
Oh, yeah.
That's one we see a lot. It's like you've got these two people who were once in love, maybe things fell apart, but then fate throws them back together and they get a second shot at happiness. What do you think it is about that particular trope that really seems to resonate with so many people?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think, on one level, it kind of speaks to our own capacity for growth, for forgiveness.
I see.
It suggests that even if, even if things don't work out the first time around, we can learn, we can evolve, we can reconcile, and maybe, just maybe, build something even stronger and better the second time around.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like it's not just the characters who get that redemption.
Exactly. It's almost like we as readers get to tap into that hope for ourselves, too.
Okay, I totally get that. But, let's be honest for a minute here. Romance novels, a lot of times, they present a pretty idealized version of love, don't they?
Oh, for sure.
It's all grand gestures and instant sparks flying and, it's not exactly how things always play out in the real world.
It's true, and I think that's where things get really interesting. On one hand, these stories, they're fantastic escapism. They can be really empowering.
Oh, yeah.
But on the other hand, I think there's a danger that they can set up some pretty unrealistic expectations for what love should look like.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's a bit like watching one of those cooking shows, right?
Right.
You watch them and you're like amazed by the artistry, the creativity, and the final product looks absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
But let's be real. You wouldn't expect to walk into your own kitchen and recreate that dish perfectly on your first attempt.
Haha, definitely not.
And in a way, romance novels, they're a little bit like that.
Okay, that's a good analogy.
They offer a taste of something wonderful, something to aspire to. But I think it's crucial, for readers to remember the difference between fiction and reality.
You know what? You're totally right. Speaking of unrealistic expectations, I have a confession to make.
Ooh, spill the tea.
All right, so there was this book I read once, right? And the hero, he surprised the heroine with this incredibly romantic scavenger hunt all through Paris. And for a while, I got to admit, I kind of hoped my boyfriend at the time would pull off something similar. Spoiler alert, he did not. Let's just say a picnic in the park felt a tad underwhelming after that.
That's so funny, and a perfect example of how these stories, they really can, like, sneak into our subconscious and start to, like, color our perceptions, shape our expectations. So the question is, right, how do we as readers enjoy the magic, the fun of romance novels while still keeping our feet firmly planted in the real world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Bridging that gap between fantasy and real life. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it all comes down to perspective. Like we can totally appreciate the entertainment, the emotional roller coaster that these books provide, even gain some valuable insights into relationships.
Yeah, I see that.
They often explore themes like communication, empathy, compromise, even if the scenarios are like a little over the top sometimes.
You're right.
But I think it's key to remember that those tropes, those classic scenarios like the meet cute in a crowded bookstore,
Oh, yes.
those are narrative devices. They're designed to hook us in, to get us invested in the story. They're not necessarily instructions for finding love in the real world.
It's like understanding that, to create a truly delicious, amazing meal, it takes time and effort and sometimes a few kitchen mishaps along the way. Real life love, it's not always about those grand gestures or those instant fireworks.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's often about the quiet moments, the shared challenges, those everyday acts of kindness and understanding that build a strong, lasting connection. It's the journey, not just the destination.
I'm so glad we're having this deep dive. It's really making me think about these books differently. And I think it's awesome what you just said about focusing on those quiet moments, those everyday connections. That's really powerful. Another thing our notes for this deep dive highlighted was how romance novels, they can actually offer comfort, empowerment, even some positive role models for readers. How do you think those aspects fit into this whole picture?
Well, think about it this way. Imagine yourself curled up with a book, and you're reading about this character, right?
Right.
And they're going through all these incredible obstacles. Maybe they're facing down their fears, overcoming challenges, and ultimately they find love. That journey, that process, it can be really, really inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can give us as readers a boost of hope, a sense of resilience, especially if we're dealing with our own struggles in life. It's like, if they can do it, maybe I can too.
It's funny, we talk about all the potential downsides, the unrealistic expectations and all that, but we can't forget that pure joy of escapism that these books provide.
Absolutely.
In a world that's just constantly demanding our attention, it's so refreshing to just lose yourself in a world of passion and romance and those guaranteed happy endings. It's like a mini vacation for your mind.
And you know what? That's a form of self-care.
That's so true.
It's a way to de-stress, to recharge, to just like give yourself permission to step away from the everyday and just enjoy yourself.
I love that. All right, so to everyone listening out there, we'd love to hear from you. How have romance novels shaped your view of love? Have any of those tropes we talked about really resonated with you? And have you learned anything from these books that's actually helped you in your own relationships?
Wow, what a journey, exploring the world of romance novels. We talked about how these books, they're incredibly entertaining, they can be really fun to read, but they can also shape our views on love in ways we might not even realize.
Hmm.
And sometimes, yeah, those expectations might be a little unrealistic. So I think the key takeaway here is it's all about finding that sweet spot between enjoying the fantasy, the escapism, and keeping it real.
And if we take a step back and look at this from a bigger perspective, it really begs the question.
Mm.
If you were to write a romance novel, what tropes would you include? And more importantly, why would you choose those? What would your story say about your own hopes, your beliefs about love?
That is a brilliant question. Something to think about as you continue exploring the world of romance, both on the pages of your favorite books and, of course, in your own life. So to everyone out there, happy reading and happy loving.